Good morning, everybody. I am very fortunate that I was in education for 26 years because I have the teacher principal voice, so I don't need a microphone, and we're in a nice small room. And it's nice that we have this small intimate group here. And I want to give you a little bit of a history of population-focused learning series, but I'll introduce myself to you in case you don't know who I am. I'm Donna Edwards. I'm the Resiliency Program Manager at Starkmar, and I've been the project director of a system of care grant for nearly 8 years now. And part of that grant included cultural and linguistic competency. And one of the things that we had decided to do was to create training series that focused on different communities that are within Stark County. And so, of course, things that come to mind immediately are the Black community, the Hispanic community, the LGBTQ, transgender, all of the different ethnicities and races and all of those kinds of things. But we also realize that there's other parts of our community that have their own culture, and that's youth, and then there's young adults. And we've already done a population-focused learning series on youth, but we needed to have a separate one for young adults because they are a culture in and of themselves. And they find themselves in a place where they're in between those youth services and those adult services, and many times that particular community can fall through the cracks. And so that's why we've invited you here today. I'm looking around the room and I see, even though it's a small group, I see a lot of people that have the ability to get this information out, take it in, and use it to improve the services for our young adults in Stark County. Before I get started any further, I want to give some housekeeping information to you. Please feel free to continue to get coffee, water, and cookies at any time. Please feel free to use the restroom. We've kind of condensed our area, so if you go out those doors, the women's restroom is straight across the hall, and the men's restroom is to your right, close to the entrance doors on the left-hand side. So those are the important pieces that you need to know. The facility here asks that you do not wander throughout the building. They've put up doors here that kind of seclude this area from the other parts. There is a preschool that takes place here. So for safety reasons, they ask that you stay within this area. We also ask that you complete the evaluation at the end of the presentation today, and that can be done by clicking on the link in your email or scanning the QR code on your packet. So those are just some of the housekeeping things. So I'd also like to read to you some information that I found regarding young adults. And respecting the culture of the people we serve is paramount to providing effective treatment. The culture of youth is often overlooked in discussions of cultural competency. Adolescent and young adult cultures are distinct from the cultures of children and adults. In fact, youth culture is often misunderstood by adults that serve youth. Youth aspire to increased independence and freedom while still needing the support of adults. On their journey toward the independence and identity development, youth take pride in creating their world, a world separate and distinct from the traditional adult culture. So hopefully today we have our presenter, which will be in our first hour. Then we'll have a short break, and we have panelists that will come on stage, and we invite you to ask questions. We have cards available that you can write down questions. It's a small group, so you can simply sit at your seat and raise your hand and ask the questions, and certainly evoke some very powerful information from some young adults that we have here today to share their own journeys and their own experience to help us better serve them. So now I would like to introduce our main presenter. This is Bryson Davis. He's a husband, a father, a pastor, a CEO, a professor. Bryson wears many hats that have afforded him rich experiences in some of the most challenging and beautiful places around the world. He serves as a pastor at the Front Porch Fellowship in the Summit Lake neighborhood of Akron, Ohio. Recognizing the complex legacies of systemic racism that has fostered Summit Lake's infamous reputation and economic demise. Bryson's church engages issues of justice in the prophetic spirit of the Christian tradition and takes seriously the responsibility to be agents of justice, restoration, and healing. As CEO and co-founder of the Akron Leadership Foundation, Bryson facilitates leadership and economic development initiatives that serve grassroots leaders and communities throughout Greater Akron. As a PhD candidate at Cleveland State University's top-ranked Maxine Goodman Levin School of Urban Affairs, Bryson's research focuses on the intersection of racial justice and nonprofit efficacy. As a member of the outstanding faculty at Malone University, Bryson enjoys his role as an assistant pastor or professor of sociology, as well as criminal and restorative justice. From an upbringing in poverty to winning collegiate championships in executive leadership, Bryson hopes his story will encourage and inspire others to embody lives of solidarity, liberation, and grace. I'd like to welcome and introduce to you Bryson Davis.
All right. That's awkward. All that stuff said about you. Because I'm just a guy, just a dad, just trying to be a good neighbor, trying to raise up a generation of young college minds. So I'm not that special. Madonna was also moving my slides ahead. Somehow, that's okay. I'm just messing with you. I am Bryson, and I'm really grateful to be here. In the season of Thanksgiving and gratitude, I'm grateful for the opportunity I have, the privilege I have, that is, to share whatever wisdom and things that I have. But I always like to say, like, from the jump, like, I'm not the only one with wisdom. I'm on the stage, which I don't want to be, but I am. But y'all have a lot of wisdom as well, right? So I'm not the expert by any means. And our collective wisdom, hopefully, what I can do is maybe inspire some things and maybe offer some language or nuance to things that you probably already know, so that you leave here and you're just a little bit more inspired, if that. So that's my hope. But I think because we have such an intimate group, which I love, I think small is beautiful. I would like to maybe just give some opportunity for your voice, if that's cool, if we could do it quickly. So, and I know this is tough, I'm a pastor at church, so every time I'm in a meeting, I'm gonna say, just say this one thing. Someone says more than that one thing. But I trust y'all. So just give real quick your name and the organization that you represent.
All right, Abby Henry, Queer Kid. Faith James, Nani.
Hello, I'm Isaiah Smith, and I represent Winter Star Team Minute Tomorrow.
Good morning, Millicent Tatum with Stark Metro Housing Authority.
Awesome.
Good morning, Sharice Spring, the City of Canton.
Emily Christie with Family Court.
Cool.
Shelly with Family Court. Molly Evans, Walsh University. Stephanie Walker, Walsh University.
Baja King University. Kingston.
Stay.
Lori Lee, Mentor Stark.
Awesome.
Private Holland, Lobby, Stark County.
Mm-hmm.
Jewel Ackerman, Nani.
Holly Goldston, Stark Law.
Cool.
Corey James, I'm Faith's husband.
Just like me, I'm just here.
Cheryl Falcone, Nani, Stark County.
Cool.
Mary Jo Lindsay, Stark County Health Department.
Tuffy Yarlis is Stark County ESC, North Kansas City Schools Family Support Services.
Awesome.
Logan Valentine, Stark County Health Department.
Michelle Schoonover, Stark County Health Department.
Tasha Petron, Stark County Health Department.
Christina Lumen, Stark County ESC. Melissa Mack at the Ohio X.
Tiffany Williams, Family Council in Starkmar.
Emma Ingber from Pathway Caring for Children.
Gary Miller from Pathway Caring for Children.
And Melissa Gilbert from Center Services here in Kansas.
Awesome. And if you kind of heard from Donna, but you want to introduce yourself?
Beth James, Start Farm coordinator. Get all the emails from him.
Awesome.
Joshua, the video guy.
Hey, your voice matters too, my man. All right. Well, it's good to meet y'all. I think for a second also about why you're here. Some of us are maybe here because you get to get out of your office, which is dope. I don't know if you work from home or what, or maybe you get to get out of your house, which is also dope, especially have kids and things like that running around all the time. That's my story. But think about why you're here. Think about even connecting to that organization that you just identified. Why are you there? That why is so important. Think about the why for a second, and then we'll get into some of this, the content of Are We Listening? So why I'm here is because I've had a lot of people who've put their lives on the line for me to stand on their shoulders. All right, so I'm carrying on the legacy of a lot of my mom and my uncles and my cousins and my neighbors. I'm here because I really believe in young adults. I really believe that's my career. One of my careers is to be a professor and be able to inspire the minds and hearts of young adults. And so I love the opportunity I have to do that. I'm here because I really care. And that why continues to drive the work that I do. So always remember our why. So we're going to talk about Are We Listening? So I was asked to discuss, like, how can we better leverage the voice of young adults when we're thinking about how we want to serve that particular cohort. And as Donna said, this is a group that oftentimes falls through the cracks for many different reasons, some of which we'll talk about today, particularly around the issues of like healthcare and behavioral health, because I know that's a lot of like this group's sort of focus. But let's jump into it. So young adults, some of the data I'm going to present today comes from the Stark County Community Assessment. In that assessment, young adults are defined as age 20 to 24. Nationally, it's usually age 18 to 25. So as soon as you get out of adolescence, which we have extended adolescence, we all know that. But when you reach the age of 18 to about mid-20s, 25 particular, that's considered the cohort of young adult. Stark County, which is about 374,000 human beings, young adults make up about 6% of that population of age 20 to 24. Young adults also have a lot of different norms, and as Donna mentioned, there's a particular culture and subcultures within that. I picked this image on purpose because this is probably what we think about when we think about young adults. They just graduated high school. They're getting to the age where they're considered an adult. Officially, they can drink a beer. They can maybe even rent a car. They can go to Dave & Buster's without a supervisor or whatever it's called, a chaperone. Anybody know that? Yeah. They can play the guitar. They're living it up. All right, they're in college. Maybe about 40% of the young adult population across the nation is in college. Others are desperately looking for work. Others are desperately trying to stay in their mom's basement. Whatever it is, they're just trying to make it. We're doing our best. Regardless, it's a time of pronounced change. Really, in some ways, more than any other stage in life. Where, like I said, you are, a young adult's logic is changing, emotional regulation is changing, we're still developing those things. At the end of the day, our brain as a human is not fully developed until age 25, right? Which has a lot of implications on our juvenile justice system and things like that, but that's not the subject of this conversation. Regardless, so we're not fully adulting from a cognitive standpoint until about 25. So we're still learning how to regulate our emotions. We're entering into what's also called emerging adulthood. We're not quite yet adults if we consider adult as the maturation of our prefrontal cortex and those things, right? It's also called the frontier of adulthood. It's also called the novice phase. So I like that language because it's like we're just learning. We're novices when it comes to being an adult, which may be offensive to some people because everyone lands on a different part of that spectrum, right? Some of us have been adults since we were 11, right? Some of us are still not adults when we're 50. But you get the point. All right, research is showing that persons who are 18 are substantially different than people who are 25. How many of us can attest to that? Like the person I was at 18 was not the same person I was just 7 years later at 25, let alone now at whatever age you are, right? 30, 40, 50, 60, wherever you are. We change dramatically in each of those stages, just if you know anything about butterflies, come with a little bit of pain, come with a little bit of challenge, and it's necessary. We don't look the same, we don't feel the same, we don't think the same, or we don't act the same as we did when we were an adolescent. Right? According to MIT, we don't feel the same, look the same, as I said. We're still experiencing the development of judgment, morality, even cognitive structures, which we'll talk about here in a second, and our brain. And these changes are a function of both the brain, nature, and our environment, nurture. How many of y'all know brain science? Any neuroscientists in here? Many of y'all probably know that just because it's associated to your industry and your work, right? So I'm just going to do a cursory review of it just to continue to frame the conversation of young adults. So as we know, our prefrontal cortex helps us do problem solving. It helps us solve problems, which a lot of this phase in life, when we're like figuring stuff out, y'all, there's a lot of problems. Like, what kind of job am I about to get? Is it going to be a career job, or am I going to work at Mickey D's? I don't know, right? My parents are also weird. They're trying to like get me out of the house, kind of, but they also don't want to let me go. Any parents feel that, right? And my dad's like, please get out the house. My mom's like, never leave the house, right? It's a weird and difficult transitory season for young adults. And so we're trying to figure out how to solve all these problems in our lives. Our relationships are changing. We're moving from a time of just like, whatever, I'm just hooking up with people, or I don't really care about how like a serious relationship, to now, like, I'm an adult. I might have to start a family here soon. Like, that's a problem. Like, I've never done that before. But also we're thinking about planning. So that's associated with planning our long-term future and related tasks. So as we do this, it's difficult because our prefrontal cortex is still developing. All right, there's myelination happening. There's synaptic pruning happening, and all this is making our brain much more efficient. But it's also changing the very structure of our brain during the time when we think we're already adults. All right, we think most of that brain change is happening, in our younger ages, but it's still happening, and quite dramatically, in fact. There's also a lot of happening now where our different lobes are starting to talk to each other more. Right? So not just our prefrontal cortex, but the connection between our prefrontal cortex and the different lobes of our brain is helping us to better regulate our emotions. So in many ways, when you're a young adult, you're just a little bit older teenager. Right? We're not quite there yet until we're about 25. And we'll talk about some of the environmental elements that influence our brain's ability to mature. Some of our brains never mature because they get stuck, they get suspended, right? And by trauma, by education, by different things like that. Different elements of our environment that are sociological in nature. So age, education, gender norms, abuse, neglect, trauma I talked about, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, sexual identity, parents, illnesses, disabilities, substance use, education, I said, and your built environment. All these things can either enhance or suppress our brain's ability to develop and mature. These are environmental factors, and those two things, both nature and nurture, exist in a reciprocal relationship, right? So you're not defined the moment that your parents' sex gametes come together. You're not completely defined at that moment. Like you're continuing to be shaped, even the structure of your brain continues to be shaped by its environment and can be permanently shaped in that way. Many of you know that because we're in behavioral health. So this is kind of what it's like in our brain. It's like, what the heck is going on? Like there's so much change happening that it's really hard to do the things like problem solve and plan. One, because there's so much going on. Two, because my brain actually hasn't developed the skills to do so. Right, so we like to talk about addiction as a disease, correct? That's a sociological construct as well. Addiction wasn't always a disease, we know that, right? But now it's a disease, which is good. I'm not calling young adulthood a disease, but we want to have an understanding of young adulthood similar, not too dissimilar, from the understanding we have of youth, right? In the criminal justice system, a lot of scholars advocate that we should not try young people as adults because their brain isn't capable of making wise decisions. You can argue with that. There's nuances, of course, right? We're not going to be binary and think of like black or white. But it's not that actually that far off for young adults as well. Their brains also still aren't fully capable of making wise decisions or regulating their emotions enough to make clear decisions. So that's a young adult. It's like, what the heck's going on in many ways? And that's also changing rapidly because of society and because of culture. Right? We live in a global, rapidly changing society that's technologically steeped, where social media has changed things and pandemics have changed things, right? And those things matter. Pandemics have changed things. So in 2021, we know that was after COVID hits the scene, but it's still around. It's still around today, obviously. But the impact that COVID had, that initial jarring of the entire world, was quite dramatic in 2020 and 2021. And so in 2021, a study done by the University of California in San Francisco found that 48% of young adults struggled with mental health. They did a study between June and July. So in the middle of 2021, almost half of young adults said that they struggle with mental health. That's like over 11 million young adults. That's a lot of people. 11 million young adults saying we're struggling with mental health. Furthermore, young adults also have the second highest prevalence of major depressive, episodes. Who has the first highest prevalence? Which cohort? Adolescents. Yeah, that's a good guess. They're not all that far apart. So it's a trick question, I guess. So yeah, adolescents. But then young adults have the second highest prevalence of depressive attitude or depressive episodes. It's at 17% compared to any other age group. And that is obviously correlated to suicide, which is the second leading cause of death for young adults. What's the first leading cause of death? Car accidents, yeah. That still relates also to just the maturation of young adults, right? We ain't always thinking clearly or thinking straight, which leads to, it's not, this isn't about car accidents, but you get the point. Right, second leading cause, suicide. 25% of young adults have reported considering suicide in the past month. That's 1 out of 4. This is compounded when you think of other positionalities or the intersection of other social identities. When we think about gender and sexuality, it's higher in women. It's higher in the LGBTQI plus community. It's higher in the Black community as well. There's significant disparities in treatment for behavioral health. And we know that, many of us know in this room, that there's these issues, suicide, mental health, so on. But because young people think of themselves as invincible, they fall through the cracks. That's one of the reasons. right? A lot of scholars call them the young invincibles. We just out here. You can't stop us. I ain't seen the doctor. I'm invincible. I don't need no mental health care. I'm invincible. Right? Literally, I just had a conversation with a friend yesterday. And this brings up another issue, but he has some mental health challenges, but they're not really hindering his life that much, right? But I was like, hey man, you should, I find it a good practice, just like I go to the gym 3 or 4 times a week. Like I try to in the summers when I'm less busy, like I get down with a counselor. It's just like, it's good for my body, it's good for my mental health, it's good for my spirituality, it's good for all that stuff. Like, you ever consider that? He was like, nah, I would never do that. You know what I'm saying? But then through lots of conversation, he finally did. He went to a counselor. His job agreed to pay for 6 sessions because one of the barriers, which we'll talk about, was just cost, right? So his job agreed generously to pay for 6 sessions. He goes to 6 sessions. He goes to 5 sessions. He says after 3 sessions, his counselor said he doesn't need to come. And he was like, yeah, see? And I was like, that's horrible. Like, what kind of counselor? I don't know. I'm not a counselor, but I've been to some counselors, and thank God they never told me, like, you don't need to keep coming here. All right? That's not the point of a counselor, really, just to, like, fix you. It's to be with you. And after 2 sessions or 3 sessions, the counselor's saying, you don't got to come back. It's probably because that counselor also has this image in their head of a young person. Word? Like, the counselor's looking at my friend like a young invincible too. And it's tough because my he's a psychology major, so he knows all the lingo. He probably just got himself right out of that counseling real easy, right? But young adults have the highest uninsured rate of all our cohorts. Even with the Affordable Care Act and the way that expanded healthcare dramatically, like you could be 26 and on your mom's health insurance and dad's, or whoever your parent is, right? And that young adult cohort still has the lowest uninsured rate out of all cohorts. This young adult cohort forgoes finding primary care physicians, which I consider a primary care physician as like the quarterback of the healthcare system. Right? A lot of people don't really appreciate the primary care physician, maybe because you haven't had a good experience with one, but they're the person who's like, they're going to help you. They're going to help you get to the right specialists. They're going to help you navigate the healthcare system. They're the person you go to and you see the most often. Like when you get in a huddle on the sports, on the football field or on the basketball court, like the person who's saying stuff is your primary care physician, right? Young adults don't have those. They don't have those. It's too hard to find one. We don't know what the marketplace is. What's a marketplace? You can take economics in class in high school, right? So that's all the language is confusing. You don't know how to navigate the ACA marketplace. We don't know how to find a PCP, primary care physician. And all these things stymies young adult access to preventative care and to behavioral health services. Young adults are largely overlooked in our healthcare system. What are some of the barriers to that? To our not so invincible young invincibles? They're not so invincible, right? Because we just talked about some of the suicide rates and mental health challenges, right? Young adults are not invincible, although physically, yes, statistically, they're in better shape than our older cohorts. But that does not mean they do not need to be a part of the care system. Some of those barriers we talked about, cost is a barrier. It's restrictive. Young adults are building wealth, or trying to figure out how to build some wealth. So a lot of them don't have wealth yet. They don't have a lot of income. And on average, I think it was costing young adults who did have insurance about $4,000 a year, which exceeds the average recommended amount that a young adult should spend on healthcare, based on the average median income of a young adult. Right? You're not supposed to spend more than 10% on healthcare of your income. For most young adults, spending $4,000 on their income would be more than 10%. So cost is prohibitive, no doubt. Physical health is prohibitive as well because it makes you feel invincible even though you're not. Lastly, knowledge is prohibitive and acts as a barrier because Young adults don't know how to navigate the healthcare marketplace, like I said. They don't know the amount of services that are available to them. And young adults also aren't knowledgeable about how to address healthcare costs, which can be addressed, right? When we think about some of the solutions to that, one is integration. So how do we enhance the integration of behavioral health with our primary care service to provide greater access to mental health services and behavioral health services and substance abuse disorder treatments? This has been a large push in our country over the last decade or so or more. That's why when you go to the doctor, they ask you how you're feeling too, right? They don't just say, how's your elbow? They say, have you felt blue in the last few days, right? Do you use alcohol? How often do you use alcohol? So there's a great, at least theoretically, there's a great benefit to integrating this ability to access mental health services and behavioral health services through your primary care provider, who you should be seeing at least once a year, right? That puts it puts more burden on doctors and things like that. We understand that, but one is greater integration of behavioral health with primary care to provide greater access. Another is peer support, so employing peers to fill the gaps. There's a gap in mental health providers. There's not enough of them. There's a gap in counselors. There's a gap in all things, a lot, especially since COVID. So what if we were employing peer-to-peer support specialists or community health workers to fill that gap? That meets both some of the economic deprivation that we've been experiencing by employing more folk, as well as it's a good way to help young adults talk about mental health issues, behavioral health issues, because it's easier to talk to someone who's a peer than to someone who is not. Affordability can be addressed. I'll just say we could just try to make healthcare more affordable without getting into the economics of things. A more balanced approach. One thing Donna said about the culture is young adults have to have just enough challenge, but also just enough support, right? So if you have too much challenge, then all that craziness that's already happening becomes more crazy, and then we're like, I'm gonna just go back to when I was 17, right? I'm just gonna stay at mama's house for a while because you're pushing me too hard. I don't have the capacity yet. I need just enough challenge to be exposed to different things that are gonna mature me in my environment and in my family and my school and things like that. But I don't need too much challenge because it's gonna make me afraid. And then I will revert to both cognitively as well as in my body. I will try to hide from the challenges of adulthood. So we need a balance of challenge, not too much, not too little, as well as support. If you're over supporting, if you're helicopter parenting, then you also get a response where the young adult will just stay under the helicopter, right? Why would I go out into the world if I got a nice, cozy helicopter to sit in the shadow of? So a balance between challenge and support, and then also systems thinking. Just keeping an eye on my clock here. So I want to talk a little bit about systems thinking here. So I think it's a good tool for us to keep wrestling with, because by nature, y'all, some of you are like, I know systems thinking, I'm a PhD in systems thinking. We don't do systems thinking, all right? We don't do it that well. We practice reductionism. That is the law of our land. We want to reduce everything to silos and to little isolated things. So, and that's just how we think. It's by default. So if there's a challenge, we'll talk about this. We'll do a little scenario building here. But we tend to think of like, well, what organization do you represent?
Oh, Kent State.
Kent State. That's not a good answer. Not a good example. How about you? Let me go to a different table. How about you? How about behind you?
NAMI Stark County.
NAMI Stark County. What's NAMI do?
We offer education, support, advocacy for people who have mental health conditions, their family and friends. We're a nonprofit.
Awesome. So, I'm sorry, I cut you off.
Do everything for free, sorry.
For free. That's good. That's cool. So Isaiah, right?
Sir.
Isaiah is struggling. He's like, he comes to Nami. He's like, yeah, I've been struggling with depressive bouts. Nami's like, we got you. We got a program for that, right? That's still reductionist though, because we need a system to come around. We need a system of care that Nami is part of. But our tendency is to always be like, we have the program for that. And we could say, well, we have partners that we like loop in there. But our notion of collaboration is largely impoverished. It's largely impoverished. So I'm not calling out Nami. Nami's probably killing it. I don't know. But I would say in general, none of us are killing it. Because the American ideal is to be individual, and our organizations represent that same individualism. I would call it hyper-individualism. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So let's think in systems thinking, which is a way to maximize effectiveness, to maximize program effectiveness, as well as like the effectiveness of a system of care. What's a system? A system is a entity of different interconnected pieces and parts that works toward a shared mission or goal to produce some sort of result, right? So a systems approach, therefore, is the opposite of reductionism because it demands collaboration, it demands synergy, it demands thinking a little bit bigger, it demands what we call zooming out, thinking about all the different pieces and parts of the system, how they work together like cogs and fit together, understanding that people are also systems. And there's different parts of a person that Nami alone cannot serve. So what are some of the characteristics of a system? One is it has a purpose. Two, it has parts. All parts must be present for the system to function optimally. That's where we oftentimes fall short. It has an order where the order of the parts matters as well. And then it has to maintain stability through feedback. And that's really one of the things I want to focus on today as we wrap up this long presentation, is feedback. Where do the voices of young adults come in to the system? Where do the voices of young adults come into the system? Systems thinking utilizes feedback loops to better understand how to address problems. Feedback loops answer the questions of why and how we're doing things. Oh, that's granulated. But this is an IPO system. I, input, P, process, O, output. And then here's one of the really important elements of a system, which is feedback. There's also leverage points. We'll talk about this. But here's what I want to encourage y'all to do more, if you're probably already doing it to a degree. I want to encourage us to do it more, to lean more deeply into this, is to hear, submit to, and amplify the voices of young adults, both here in the process, and the input, and certainly in the feedback. The feedback changes the system, right? The feedback says, well, what we put into it last time didn't work. Because here's the output. So I'm just picking on Nami because it's the one, after 5 attempts, you're the first one I got. All right, we did it. We got this dope program. We're helping Isaiah. He's doing mental health treatment through Nami. But guess what? My man Isaiah keeps coming back. That's a feedback. That's an element of feedback. What's going on? Something about the output's not satisfying what Isaiah needs. How can we listen to Isaiah? So we're like, yo, Isaiah. Isaiah sits down with my friend from NAMI. He says, the treatment's actually been pretty helpful, but when I leave here, I don't have a job. So then I'm just sitting around bored. I'm also just feeling inadequate. I'm feeling a lot of shame. I'm feeling all that stuff. And your treatment's helping me deal with my shame. I still need to get a job, right? So how do we take that feedback from Isaiah and then use it as input so that we can even maybe change the process as well. That's a different type of input, so that we can get better outputs. And how can we influence the process so that NAMI is working with who does job development, workforce development? Your organization, what's it called?
Mentor Start.
Mentor Start. How are we practically getting NAMI and Mentor Start at the same table regularly? Often. Like doing a real type of what I call costly collaboration. Collaboration is not collaboration unless it's costly. Unless it's, which we'll talk about, unless it's in your budget. That's how you know an organization is really about something, if it's a line item. A lot of organizations will come up to your meeting like, we really believe in collaboration. Oh my God, we collaborate like crazy. You ain't never collaborate with nobody. It's not in your budget. All you do is go to meetings and hog up all the space. All right? If something's in your line item, I know you're about it. Where's collaboration in your line item? Right? Where's collaboration in your strategic plans? It's probably not in there. It's probably like, we got to build more money. We got to build more buildings. We got to get to this by year 5. What if you went smaller and slower and relationally? Okay. Another part of the system is leverage points. Leverage points are places in the system that can be tweaked to support greater impact. We're going to talk about this here in a second. I think. There's a lot of leverage. These are points, you could tweak a lot of different parts of the system and process, but these are particular points where if we just tweak it a little bit, it can actually turn into tremendous change. Right? So I want you all to think about that. I'm not going to give you, I don't know the answers, but I'm going to invite you to a way of thinking about them. So let's look at this. Let's use this systems thinking to look at drug use in young adults. We know drug addiction is a chronic disease. We talked about that. It changes the brain. It changes our dopamine tolerance. Like, I can't just get down with eating food and having sex and drinking apple juice. Like, I need a higher hit of dopamine now, right? And then my tolerance changes permanently in a way. So like, I can't get by unless I have that high dopamine hit. All right, we know that. We all in this room are behavioral health specialists to some degree. So addiction is not just an individual choice. Like, I'm a bad person making poor moral decisions, so then I use drugs and my parents shame me. No, it actually is both a nature and nurture, a variable of both nature and nurture, right? We know that this is a huge challenge in young adulthood. At least 2 in 5 young adults have used illicit drugs in the past year. And I'm using mostly national data here. I don't know what the data would be here in Stark County. Oftentimes it's higher in counties with greater poverty and greater minoritized populations. So Stark County has a city called Canton, where almost 30% of the population is black, which is huge, similar to Akron. And so you would see you would likely see a little greater illicit drug use in those cases. Not because black people use drugs. There's a strange, complex relationship between that. But because there are associations between poverty and challenges and those things. Actually, black people on average use drugs less than white people. But there's still a relationship between issues of poverty and illicit drug use. We know that young adults are using drugs more than other cohorts: hallucinogens, cocaine, opioids, prescription medicine, methamphetamines, heroin, all that stuff. Marijuana use is at an all-time high in young adults. About 43% of young adults use marijuana use. Interesting, because it's now recreational, can be used for recreational use, but there's plenty of data that shows that actually marijuana use is not the best for us. This is just me with my professor hat on, right? I'm not pro or against. I'm just saying what the data says, right? Marijuana use it has been linked to mental health illness. Many studies are showing that. A study that just came out, like 5 studies just came out in 2023. Marijuana use is not, duh. Like, it can be helpful, we know that. It could be helpful for some people, but like when you're smoking something, not that great for you, right? Again, I'm not making an argument for or against it, but a lot of young adults are using marijuana, and it is linked to mental health illness. We know that addiction is severely undertreated in young adults, right? Because they're underserved. And we need to think about this in systems. We know that recovery is more than an individual enterprise, right? It's not an individual enterprise. It has multiple parts of a larger system, such as family, school, community, media, healthcare, economics. But do our processes reflect the systems? Do our processes reflect the systems? Where is there collaboration between our organizations that represent these different industries and systems? These are, if you are in leadership or in management in your organization, these are questions you want to ask yourself. Where are we collaborating across these different systems? Or different parts of the system, I'm sorry. Where is there touch points between departments, even within my organization? When does the HR department meet with the marketing team? They don't need to meet. Yes, they do. I'm all about collaboration. No, you're not. Your departments never meet each other. Well, I only have one person. Well, then you're not about collaboration. It should be easier if you only have one person in your department, right? Where are there touch points between departments in your organization and if you're about collaboration, it should permeate the culture of your organization. Permeate. Where is our strategic plan? I talked about that one. And where are my budgets? Where are their allocations toward a system of care? I'm sorry. Have we identified leverage points in the system? This is one I want y'all to write down. Where are the leverage points in my systems? What actions for treatment can be enhanced to provide greater access to young adults in my organization? Or if I had a conversation with another organization, how can we identify leverage points? Maybe after this meeting, you're like, yo, we got to get together, y'all. We got to have some costly collaboration. Let's identify some leverage points, all that stuff he said, all right? What resources exist for schools to provide education on substance use? So we have some schools here, right? Let's go, Kent State, Walsh. What resources are available for mental health education for your young adults? Can we even start that in primary education as well? What organizations are serving the LGBTQ plus community? What actions can be tweaked in these organizations to educate folk about mental health and foster greater collaboration with other parts of the system? How are these leverage points being identified by young adults themselves? How are these leverage points being identified by young adults themselves? That's the real question here. Because all of us know-it-alls can sit down and be like, okay, here's the answer. But unless Isaiah is telling me, we need to do better. Like, I don't want to hear it. I'm just going to be blunt. I don't want to hear it. I want to hear from Isaiah. I don't want you to go to cdc.org or whatever it is, .gov, and go to the best practices tab. And I'm a researcher. I get it. Like, that's what I do. Like, I create research so people can be like, here's the best practice. But if you don't ask Isaiah, throw the best practice away. You better ask Isaiah first and last, and he better be the one interpreting the best practice. Is it meaningful? What do you think about it? We want to listen. Listen to their voice, because why? Voice is power. Voice is power. No voice, no power. No voice, no power. We know that young adults don't vote as much as the rest of the group. They actually aren't that far behind. But on a good year, we'll get about half of our young adults to go out and vote for the presidential election. On a good year, we'll have about 20 to 30% who go out and vote on like midterms, right? No voice, no power. How are we at an organizational level, at a community level, hearing, submitting to, and amplifying the voices of Isaiah's and other young adults in this space? Hear, submit, amplify. How do we do that? We want to recognize barriers. What are the historical barriers to hearing people's voices? We want to How am I doing on time? Okay. Ten minutes, all right. I'll be done in 15. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. All right, we want to recognize barriers, historical barriers to participation, to inclusion, to hearing the voice. Why can I not hear Isaiah's voice? There's a reason. We need to understand data. I'll get into data. But there might be a reason why a lot of Isaiahs are never at the table, as opposed to Isabella's. You know what I'm saying. All right. We want to recognize power dynamics even in a space. So a lot of us have done a better job at setting tables, but we have not deconstructed power at the tables. Which means if I'm sitting at a table with Isaiah, I need to recognize the historical barriers to him being at the table. I need to understand what kind of table did I build? Is it square or is it round? Is it too tall for him? Is it too short for him? And what is the dynamic that's happening between us? That's my alarm. What's the dynamic that's happening? Like, am I giving enough power away so that Isaiah feels comfortable to tell me what actually he wants to say? Or am I going to penalize him, even if it's not overt, right? It's in sociology called the looking glass self. There's really subtle announcements of acceptance or rejection. And it only takes one for Isaiah to never come back to the table. Or if he does come back to the table, he's not going to be transparent. All right, so we need to recognize power dynamics. Maybe instead of, give me your name, Nami, I'm sorry. Cindy? Maybe Cindy shouldn't meet with Isaiah, actually. Maybe, what was your name? Maybe Maja should meet at the table with Isaiah. Because we just can't do nothing about this power dynamic. I'm gonna stay in my office. Maja, you go to the table. All right, share power, build power through investments. Here we go back to this again. This is how I know you're really about building power, because you have a line item, right? You didn't just set a table. You paid Isaiah to be at the table. Come on, Isaiah. Get that money. He said, I might show up if you just ask me to volunteer, but I'll definitely show up if you cut me a check. Why not? Right? The $200 that you're dedicating to donuts for your morning meeting, give it to Isaiah. You can get by without donuts in a meeting. All right, investment of time, also of money and attention. Time is a big one because we don't want to move small and slow. We want to move big and fast. All right, so how long are you going to spend in Isaiah's neighborhood? Do you know where Isaiah lives? And will you go? And then how long will you kick it there? I'm too busy. That's me. I'm too busy. I can't do that. I have a nonprofit in Akron, and I always have friends sitting up front, houseless friends. And so many times I just walk by them because I have so many emails to send. How many of y'all got too many emails to stop at Isaiah's crib? Share power, build power, invest time, money, and attention. Institutionalize power. How can I institutionalize this? How can I institutionalize whatever feedback and voice I hear from my neighborhoods? Not just do a program or a one-off intervention. How can we institutionalize that? Maybe we create a position. We create that position. You're going to be the table setter with all the folk. Because Cindy, it hasn't been working for me, right? I did the feedback loop. Every time I set a table, ain't working. Or, 10% it works. Let's do 100%. Let's do 90. Let's do 60. It's better than 10, right? Institutionalize it, put it in your policies, yada, yada, yada. Move slow and small. That's a big one. That's just like a paradigm shift. Slow and small. Every time someone says, like, I got Bev, you go by Bev, right? When she comes from there, it's first question that someone's going to ask her is like, how many people came? Right? That's always a question. If you run a ministry, if you run a nonprofit, like, how many people came? Like, if one person comes, you did it. So small is beautiful, y'all. Small is beautiful. Empires crush minoritized people. Empires crush young adults. Empires are big, they just want to survive. And then last, have a beginner's mind. Throw all this stuff out the window if you need to. Like, be in the moment. Notice. Pay attention. And just go with the flow sometimes. You don't always have to have a formula about everything. I don't have much time left, so I'm just going to kind of gloss over this. But this is a nerdy, like PhD type thing, but anyone could do it. Disaggregating data is really important. Our census, for instance, only has like 5 categories for race. One of them in particular, like Asian, has like so many ethnicities. But you're just like, nah, I'm Asian, right? You could be Korean, you could be Southeast Asian, you could be so many Japanese. Like, don't test my geography right now. But like, you could be so many different things in that Asian category. You can also be black, African black born, you could be American black born, you could be Caribbean black born, you could be so many different versions of black. We won't get into white. I'm a race scholar, so anyway, white is a goofy term. Anyways, but there's so many different ways we can disaggregate that data and align it with different positions. So we could say, hey, instead of just having an Asian category, we can better determine people's mental health if we have ethnicities in there, and then we also can align that with different things like census tract. We can align that with different things that, even qualitative data. Like, here's how I feel. We did a survey, a focus group with different parts of the Asian community. And one of the questions we asked qualitatively was, do you feel supported by your local organizations? If I have that disaggregated data, I can align that with also different ethnicities, and we could see which particular groups are being serviced or not. Does that make sense? Our data is too lumpy, right? We gotta tease it apart, which starts in the beginning. Like, you can't go back and disaggregate it. You have to ask the questions disaggregated up front. Okay, I think that's enough for that. Some of the reasons we want to do that is because it reduces missed data. It also improves program effectiveness because we have much more clear voices. Data is voice. Data is voice. And it can inform much better policy. All right. This is the last slide. The last thing we want to do is empower those voices. Voice is power. But because of how systems work, you can give someone a voice and ignore it. It can make zero impact in the system, right? If it's not institutionalized. So what do we do? How do we empower voices? I talked about some of that, like sharing power, things like that, getting out the way when possible, knowing where to build tables and how to build tables and who should be building those tables with you. Creating fair opportunities for everyone, regardless of their race, socioeconomic class, etc., gender, sexuality. But some warnings of what are in Buddhism's called near enemies, which is like they're very close to each other. They're oftentimes are so close you don't notice them, but this thing that's really close is actually quite profoundly an enemy of the better thing. All right, it's a near enemy. So a near enemy of empowering can be fetishizing. Where all of a sudden Isaiah keeps getting called, like, Isaiah, we love your voice, bro. Your voice is the best, bro. Your voice, your voice, your voice. And a lot of times when you fetishize, you don't actually substantiate, so Isaiah's still ain't getting paid. But he keeps getting called to show up at your meetings. And Isaiah becomes an object of some greater mission, as opposed to a person whose value and dignity, unmistakably. So we want to move from this. We want to move from fetishizing even Isaiah. We want to move from fetishizing race and some of these identities, because you can ignore. There's folks in the camp of like ignoring. There's folks in the camp of fetishizing, or the only thing that matters is race. There's so much information missing if that's the only thing that matters, right? So we want to avoid fetishizing, we want to avoid ignoring, And we also want to avoid paternalizing, which I would say of these is the near enemy of empowerment. It's this neoliberal enterprise of saying, like, here's the systems that have oppressed you, Isaiah. Now use them and become just like me. Instead of like, let's change the system, yo. Like, system ain't working, hasn't worked. Instead of making you conform to it, let's build a better system. Paternalizing is making you like me. It's sort of like giving you a pat on the back to do the thing that like it looks like you're doing, but you're really doing the thing that I want you to do. And it's making me look better. So the near enemy of empowerment is paternalization, which isn't doing things for, it resembles empowerment. It resembles like self-efficacy building, self-actualization, but it's not. It's self-interested. Does that make sense?
Yep.
All right. Thank you very much.
Well, all I can say for me is, wow. I had no idea what to expect from Bryson. I was part of the process of planning this. It was done by someone else, and that person is out of town. So I was asked to facilitate, and I had no idea. I know Faith, I know Isaiah, I hadn't met Abby. And I had no idea from his bio what to expect. And I can tell you what, this is probably one of the most powerful ones that we've had in a while. And I am so thankful that we have our video guy, because this will go on our YouTube channel. And I would suggest, because I'm going to do it, I would suggest you show it to other people in your organizations. Because I don't know about you, but I'd like to ask you, how many people here have the power to go back to your organization and say, hey, I saw a really good presentation about far beyond young people, but about being empowered to make change. How many of you have the ability to go back and do that? Thank goodness. And if you don't, then I suggest you use your voice to start talking about it and saying, this is what I saw. This is what I heard. We need to take a look at this. I agree 100% with the fact of collaboration. Oh, we're great at collaboration. We meet all the time. We are so meeting heavy and results broke that it's pathetic. And so we need to have where it is costly, where we do say, yes, we're going to pay you to be at the table because your time is valuable. And this mantra has been used since I first came to the system of care. Nothing about us without us. So if you're wanting to know about young adults, you ask young adults. If you want to know about families, you ask families. You don't go out and buy a bunch of dog treats and dog beds and show up at somebody's door and say, hey, here you go, this is free. You can have all of this. It's a year's supply. And they look at you and say, I don't have a dog. And I think that's what we do a lot of times. We come up with these ideas, and they're great, but we never asked, is this really what you need? And that's why I think these population-focused learning series are can be so profound and so helpful to all of us. But I have to challenge you. It can't stop at 12:30 when this is all over. It requires you to go back and talk about what you heard, the highlights of what you heard, and get other people talking about it. Find like-minded people from different organizations and say, how can we make this collaboration really work? And so with that, I thank you from the bottom of my heart for your information. Thank you. So during this time, if you want to use the restroom, get a fresh cup of coffee, get another cookie, whatever you want to do, we're going to have the panelists come up, take the stage, and we'll have an opportunity for you to ask any questions of the panelists. They'll introduce themselves. And we also have some general questions to kind of get things started in case folks feel a little timid right now. But I'm hoping that what you heard has sparked some inquiry about how this can work for us and how do I do that and what more do I need to know. So we'll take a little break. We'll invite the folks to come up. And Bryson, you're not finished yet, so we still have some work for you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Isaiah Smith. To be honest, I have a lot going on right now, but so I work with Mentor Start. So it's like a career exploration / mentoring program that we work in McKinley High School and Jackson High School, just kind of teaching them all the tips and tricks that you need to adulthood. And the biggest thing is like building their web of support. So trying to show them that they can really build the life that they want to have, just through, you got to pick up some of these, little tips and tricks that even some of us as adults do not have, So trying to give them that at a young age where they can really create the life that they want. And another one I work for is called Men of Tomorrow, which is, we work with young men that are usually referred through like the courts. So most of them have like a court case. And we just trying to help them try to get back on their right path and also get their mind right. I'm also a peer recovery supporter. So thank you for that. I was able to get my certification this year and just kind of help those around my age get in recovery, whether it's like mental health or substance abuse. And then another job I just started is called Leaders Edge / Activation, where it's kind of life coaching / mentoring in the middle schools. So I'm at Lehman right now, working with the 7th graders on just like building character values and trying to help them adult, I guess you could say, at an early age.
Great. Thank you, Isaiah. Faith.
Hi everybody, my name is Faith James. I work with NAMI Stark County as their young adult coordinator. I've been in the position about a year. I specifically oversee the program Youth Move Stark County. My job is also attached to Stark-Mar and also with Youth Move Ohio. The groups and program is offered to ages 11 to 30. I split those ages up because of the conversations in which the different mindsets of the ages. But yeah, that's a bit about me.
Thank you. Abby?
I'm Abby Henry. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the founder of Queer in Canton, which is a local nonprofit organization to try and build community and help queer and trans people in the area find belonging. So we do monthly support groups, youth programming, social gatherings, educational events, and we opened a LGBTQ plus community center in August of this year.
Thank you very much, and welcome. And I'll just remind you, we don't have microphones, so if you tend to talk a little bit low, just maybe exert your voice just a little bit, it will be helpful. I'm going to practice what I preached, and so I'm going to start because we usually have questions that we've created in the case that maybe there weren't some questions to begin with. But nothing about us without us. So do any of you, through the presentation, or maybe you came with something in your mind, do you have a question that you'd like to ask any one of the panelists right now? Not right now? Okay. So I'll go ahead and start. And this could go to any one of the panelists. What do you think is the level of voice and perspectives of young adults in the various systems that they need to navigate?
feel like probably pretty low. I feel like when I was growing up here and trying to navigate like the mental health system, I didn't feel very supported. I didn't really know where to go, where to turn to. My mom found me a therapist, and he was an older man and would just ask me like, how are boys? How's, sports, things like that. And it wasn't really digging deeper into like why I was seeking a therapist and like why I was seeking help. It was kind of just like, it felt like a lack of respect. Like my problems weren't that serious. Like, it's nothing that I needed to be there for.
Oh yeah, I would also agree with that. Because we have experiences where they are low because they feel like their voice isn't going to be heard, even if they had the confidence to kind of speak up. They're like, why? They're like, no one cares anyways, kind of thing. But then on the other part, as like being like a peer supporter, you actually do get to hear their voice, honestly. Like when they know that they can trust you, they kind of just get to the point where they just let like everything out. And that's kind of like the beauty of it, and that we found that just being that peer supporter kind of empowers them to be able to talk about themselves and kind of share those experiences that they won't feel comfortable sharing with even like their teacher or parents. So I would say like it's kind of like 50-50 depending on your role.
So I would definitely say that the level of voice is getting better. Like I would say that just because I think that our programs are quite an example of things getting better, because I would say back when we were teenagers, I don't think a lot of these programs were that present because I didn't know about them. And if I would have known about half of these programs, I would have been a part of them. So I feel like they are getting better, whether it's little by little, but it's happening. And these programs are, I think, quite a literal example of us trying in the community to give voice.
Sure. I'm interested in, you've all kind of talked about trust. So what do you think it takes to build trust with young people so that they are coming through with their authentic voice versus what they think, what you think they want them to say? So what have you guys all experienced?
I'll say it's a variety of things. It could be simple things as far as just how you look, to be honest. Like, for example, if you're, depending on your area, like if you're diverse, sometimes they just want people to look like them to just be able to share. Also storytelling, just sharing your story, just letting them know that, because most people, even I kind of felt when I was in high school, when you look at people in professional setting, you kind of feel real disconnected. You just feel like I guess you could say they got lucky or, this and that, but until you really hear their story, that they, quit a couple jobs or failed a couple classes. So really just being able to share your story and come down where you can come down on the same level, or, they bring them up to your level where you let them know that, I didn't have the perfect life. Also, I had roller coasters, but I was able to find my ways and navigate that. And that's what I want to help you to do now.
I would also say, it's important to be living the things that you're teaching. So if you can't quite literally be an example of that, what you're saying, they're not going to listen to you. And nowadays, people have these things called vibes where they can kind of tell what you're saying is what you're doing versus what you're just saying and you're not really doing. So just whether we like it or not, in these positions, we are leaders. So it's very important that we are practicing the things that we are saying. So that way it's evident to others that what we're saying really does work.
I think harm reduction is really important too. I think that sometimes it can feel like, you're preaching, people can be preaching something or trying to tell, young adults, young people what to do and how to live and how to act. And I think that can turn a lot of people off, and, maybe people need healthier coping mechanisms and things like that. But I think if people can take more of a harm reduction approach and kind of meet people where they're at, as opposed to you have to do X, Y, and Z, or we can't meet your needs. So I think that is helpful to young people as well to build trust, like others have said.
And just to add to that too, also, like she's saying, knowing that saying if you do set a plan and it doesn't work out, knowing that it's okay for them to come back to you. I think sometimes when you set a plan, like I actually had times where I would set a plan with my mentor, Ms. Lori, and things don't work out, and I just would feel so bad. I was just like, man, I let her down, I let my mom down, you know. But the reality is they don't need, I mean, it's okay to, you know, feel that way, but just knowing that it is okay to feel that way, and that that it's not the end of the world, you know. It's like, all right, that plan didn't work, let's just figure out another one. And that in itself will be able to build trust, where they know that they can, things don't work out, they can come back to you and rely on you for some more answers, or even just be able to just talk about how it didn't work out.
Can I add to that?
Sure, absolutely.
Word to all that, I would call that embodied power sharing. Is trust building as well. So two of the like practicalities of that is to be quiet, and that's just affirming what was said. Like I listened to this Brene Brown episode about something coaching, and the key phrase was like, stay curious a little bit longer, because we're so desperate to give advice, right? So just be quiet, stay curious longer, and maybe don't give any advice, right? Which is so hard for parents. I'm a parent, I have 2 kids. It's so hard to just be quiet and not be the guru. And then I think also affirming. We're so problem oriented in our society. Like, what problems can we go out and fix? How can we be the heroes? It's what's as important, if not more, is actually affirming what's already good, what's already working, what's already beautiful. And I think young people love that. Our culture, you know, the culture of young people is just like, you just roast each other all the time. It's so unaffirming. Like, look at your shoes, look at your face, look at your hair, look at your whatever. Like, you can't dribble, you can't whatever. When they hear something that is like positive affirmation over their lives, it has some deep value, they get uncomfortable actually. They're like, what you mean? What? My heart is beautiful? That's weird. But when you say stuff like that, when you're quiet and then you affirm the beauty in them, they leave that conversation with trust and empowered.
I think all of the responses there are very important, because it also links to other sessions that we've had in regards to allyship. And we've talked too about the fact of, we all know we have a workforce shortage. And someone mentioned, you know, somebody looking like us or sounding like us. And let's be honest, we're lucky if we have a person. So to find workforce that fits each person is very difficult. So how do we utilize who we are to help these people? By listening, by being curious a little longer, by being affirming, so that those are the steps to becoming a trusted adult, a trusted counselor, a trusted peer support, a trusted community health worker. And I'm saying this because I know there are different occupations in this room. And I go back to my education roots. We always go to workshops and we want to make it and take it. You know, want to be able to get it and take it back to our classroom and put it into practice. I'm hoping that these little nuggets are things that you can take back and put into practice, to listen a little longer, to be curious a little longer, and to be affirming. Those are things that you can do to achieve that trusted peace that we need, no matter what you look like, no matter what you sound like, no matter what your age is, you can connect. You don't necessarily have to fit that specific category. You can make it work. So I think that's very powerful information. Thank you, and it ties so well into other things that we've done. What are some, and this was a question I think that was sent in, because I think on the registration you were maybe asked to send in some questions. So what's the best way to outreach young adults? Email.
I like
website.
I like to do in person. Honestly, I'm like real chill. So 2 parts of this. For the Men of Tomorrow, we do like one-on-ones. So we'll just literally just take them out for lunch. We'll just like talk. Sometimes if they're struggling like homework or classwork, we just sit there, go out to eat, and just do that. Car rides, which may seem so like simple. I'm not gonna lie, a lot of stuff is like simple. It's just being able to take the time. Just realizing how important that is. Of like car rides, sometimes we do. Even in like classrooms, sometimes like we'll just bring them in like donuts, cookies, you know, stuff that just to show them, like, you know, we appreciate you, and also I know you're hungry, so let's get you something to eat. And then without that, you know, we just have like real talks. But I'll say like the one-on-ones we found to be real powerful, most definitely in person. But even like small groups also, you know, 3 to 5, just to be like real intimate. And then it just allows a space where they know that they can be comfortable, that no one's going to judge them, and that they can really trust us to share whatever information that they need to, and that they can trust us to, for one, not, you know, go back and tell whoever they don't want to know that, but then also for us to be able to offer some solutions.
I would definitely say going out into the community, being present in the different community events, and also partnerships are pretty huge. So I found that with the Youth Move Stark County groups, me partnering with people that already have youth quite literally involved in their environment, community, has been extremely helpful with getting out what the program is, how I can help. Also, like, that's my way of coming into their community versus having them come into mine. So partnerships has just been a really huge in getting to the youth where they quite literally already are.
Yeah, I would echo the things that both of them are saying. I think that making a personal connection is really key. I think that a lot of times, like, a website can seem very sterile and unpersonal, and how do I know that, you know, this resource is going to connect with me? How do I know that this person is going to, you know, affirm me and validate me? You know, especially with the LGBTQ plus community, and I'm sure other communities as well. Like, how do I know that they understand what I go through and the struggles that I face? So I know, like, you mentioned TikTok earlier when we were chatting, and I think, like, the reason why TikTok is so effective in reaching people, especially in, like, the mental health TikTok space, is because, like, therapists are able to, like, talk about their experiences, talk about their specialties, talk about, you know, what makes their different, you know, strategies successful and things like that. So it's more of that, like, personal connection. Like, here's what you can expect in this type of therapy. Here's what you can expect with me as a therapist. And I think, like, for me, I see a lot of TikTok therapists, and I'm like, I wish I lived in your state. I want to, you know, be your client. So I think, you know, that's really helpful.
Yeah, can I just add that?
Sure.
Someone said, go to where they are. That was, I think it's faith. Yes. Amen. Go to set tables. We always want to set tables. If we're setting tables at all, some of us are not at that place yet. We're just, you know, what's that? Bazookaing our programs at people. Like, here's our programs. But then the next step is like, oh, let's set a table. I think the next step of progression is actually, like, you don't need to set a table. There's already a table. Like, go sit at it. And then I would also say vulnerability. If we are vulnerable, you'll connect to people's hearts.
I'm going to kind of push a little bit on this. For 4 years, we've been trying to get more young adult peer support. Starkmar has hosted trainings. Nobody signs up. We heard you say, Isaiah, that they really like their peer support. They feel trusted. And I know from previous focus groups, we had young people say, I talk more to my peer support than I do my therapist.
Yep.
How can we get young people, young adults, to be willing to be a peer support, to take advantage of the opportunity to get the training? I'm serious. How do we need to market it so that we can have that, what you're saying they want and they appreciate? How can we get people to do that?
I think there's a lot to that. The biggest, obviously, you know, like, just the knowing of it. I mean, that's one. A lot of people don't even know about this role and the importance of it. We're so caught up on, like, the counselor and psychiatrist and all these, like, bigger terms that we don't really know the importance of a peer role. But then also, I always say too, this is kind of new. Like, all of this this mental health talk, all this space. I mean, honestly, it's a part of change in just our world in general. But it's real new. I always say that we're like the Steve Jobs in this at the work that we do. As far as the, when the iPhone first came out, people were like, "What is this?" And like, "What is this thing that you can like touchscreen? Like, what do you mean? Like, what?" And then this is just a new space. This is something that was destroying our world for a long time, and people would just look at them as, oh, they're sick or they have an issue or, something's wrong with them. And even worse words, that we all have heard of. But honestly, it's just, it's new, to be honest. So I would just say being able to promote, for one, the importance of it, but then also just more in detail what this role is too, because in the schools, this field has become more common, especially with like COVID. Like even some of the students we talk about, and they're like juniors and seniors, sophomores too, they even talk about how they want to get into this space just for one, their experience that they live, especially with like parents, experience that they live with themselves. So I think that they would be interested. It's just that maybe they don't really know about it. And I know it's hard too, but for one, just being able to express like maybe any kind of like benefits or like pay with that too, especially like when the young adults are at that space where, they do need to get money. It's not everything, but it is a big part of it, especially trying to get out of their situation. So just trying to express maybe the importance of the benefits, exactly what the role is, and then honestly be able to market that in the schools, because they don't really know. They just hear about, when you're in high school, you just hear about the big jobs. You just hear about pro sports or trying to be a doctor. But there's so many other positions that we all know of, so many other like cool positions. So being able to just like market that, even like in the schools. And sometimes we like to do stuff where we just bring students out to you guys on like a real site visit where you can just get to talk to them and tell them like what this role is, the importance of it, what you can do with it, also how quick you can get it. Like for me, being able to get it in like a month or so was like huge for me, knowing I didn't have to like go to school for this, and I didn't have to spend 2 years doing something that I know I want to do and I lived, but I needed, I want a certification in it. So I would say just probably expressing just the importance of all those kind of things, and then maybe taking it to schools, to the high schools.
Sure. But, so I've known Isaiah for 10 years now, and I remember, so he got into the certified peer recovery thing because I told him about it, right? And we brought him in to meet you to talk about it. But it was through being part of his life and seeing his journey. And I remember when I emailed you about that, because I was sitting in our office and we had a young person that came in that, didn't really want to be there. And I had a meeting with Isaiah and I was listening to the gifts that he has to just completely relate from like, what kind of games are you into? Oh, you do, talking in ways that I could never talk. And I was like, man, he is so gifted in this. But it takes the mentors, it takes the people, that have been on the journey with the kids to know that they're ready at that time. When he was 19 and 20, he might have fit your age criteria, but he was not ready. He hadn't gone through, what he'd gone through to make him be ready to do this. This was like last day.
Yeah, so
right?
So I would say that's a big thing. Maybe trying to market it to the like the managers and that of certain positions. That would be great for some of their maybe like new employees that maybe not even like know. But I'm not gonna lie, if it wasn't for like Ms. Lori and you guys reaching out, I would have no idea. Because we already do this work, but to realize that you can like get certified in it and get some more like training, it was just like, whew, I was like, oh wow, like this is like official and also very important. So I would say, yeah, most definitely maybe try to market it to some of the businesses and nonprofits, just like their managers, and saying this is what we offer for some of your young people that work with the community, and this is the opportunity that they can have. And also just expressing that, it doesn't take that much time, because, we're in the age where everyone has a lot going on. But if you, like for me, it was huge knowing I could just get it in like a few weeks or so. And that I would have it, for like a couple years. It just meant like a lot to me versus, going to college for 5 years, not even finishing, for some people. I think it was just like huge. I'll say most definitely trying to promote it to some of the businesses and organizations.
Sounds like we need to set the table for this conversation and like collaboration, a true collaboration. Yeah, right.
And with that with themselves, they would be able to promote that they have a peer recovery position with one of the requirements, going through your training to get that kind of thing. But that would be part of all the work.
Bev, are you taking notes of how we're going to market this for our next training? Yeah, which we do have young adult peer support training coming up here in December 11th. It is virtual at this particular time. We have another one scheduled in May. We're hoping that we'll have enough participants for it to be in person. So maybe in that meantime, we'll set a table here and get folks. Faith? Yeah.
So I just wanted to just mention when it comes to advertising, like how when we're advertising, we need to make sure that we're very clear as to what the goal of the job is and also what it is, and then also what it pays. So that's been like a big topic this year. I'm a part of the SOC grant, System of Care grant, and it directly involves getting peer supporters trained. And one of the biggest things they've talked about is making sure absolutely that we're paying them. So for peer supporters, once you're certified, at least through NAMI's peer support, you're able to get $35 an hour being a peer support, which is significant compared to what minimum wage is. I always tell people, it's not like necessarily a full-time job, but it could be like a part-time job once you get your certification. So once again, being clear with advertisement, like you can make $35 an hour being a peer supporter is just very important, being clear.
Yeah, and just to add on to that a little bit, it is true, like obviously the money is not like everything, but with this kind of work, I'm not gonna lie, it does take a lot. Like you are taking like a lot of energy. And with that money, sometimes you're actually using that money just for out-of-pocket things, just to like care for them. Like sometimes they might actually, can I get $20 for the weekend? Or, like my parent, we're hungry for the day, just stuff like even like that. Just to be able to like take care of them and, gas. Like it is a lot, but knowing that they have that, because there was a point in my life where we were just trying to build it up to that, and I would get drained just because I would have to find other ways to make money just to make sure that the work that I want to do was able to continue. So even though I can know for some people it may suck to admit, but it is the reality that just making sure the people that are doing this kind of work are also taken care of.
Absolutely. I'm going to switch now and kind of ask questions that are geared toward each panelist that's within their realm of expertise. So I'm going to start with Abby on that end of the table. Since the opening of Queer in Canton Community Center, how does the organization help bridge young adults and mental health support?
Sure. So when I started Queer in Canton in 2021, it was mainly an online, kind of virtual organization, of course, because of the pandemic. But we started a private like Facebook group online, which seems really small, but it allows people in the community to kind of like interact with each other, ask advice of each other, like what therapist do you go to, what psychiatrist do you go to, what primary care doctor do you go to, because it can be really tough to know who is trusted in the community, even sometimes when you have something on your website that says you support LGBTQ plus patients. Well, what does that mean? Have you gone through training? How many years of experience? What letters in the community have you served? Have you had trans patients? Have you had lesbian patients? Have you had bi patients? Are you trained in those topics? So it allowed people to kind of ask those questions and get, advice from each other, seek, resource recommendations from each other. And we also had started with a website where we would put those things, on our website for people to go and access and see okay, here's what people have said that they utilize in the community. So you can, try it out as well. One of the most consistent things we've done for probably about a year now is we do a peer support group, which is open to anyone, whether you're in the LGBTQ plus community or you're an ally. And it's really just people coming together and, again, getting advice from each other, sharing their experiences. We like to talk a lot about, in the support group, uplifting queer and trans joy, because I think a lot of times it can be very heart-wrenching, because it can seem like there's a lot of stuff stacked against us. There is, just a lot of negative things that people are talking about and happening in society around the, queer and trans communities. But it's been really great to get people together and just uplift the joy in each other's lives and realize why we're doing this and, what we're all here for. And so we just continue to try to build our network of LGBTQ plus affirming mental health resources in the area, so that if someone comes in and they, need a specific resource, we have someone that we can point them to, and we have resources that we can contact so that we can, get them the care that they need. Something that we're going to be doing in the future, probably in the new year, is doing like educational sessions. So basically kind of like Q&As with different providers in the community. So people can come in to a safe space, our community center that they're familiar with, and ask agencies, organizations, things like that, questions about their services and, how it might be applicable to them and relate to them. So that's kind of what we're doing.
Thank you. That's great. Do you have? Is there a lot of participation by providers and things like that? Have you had good?
Yeah,
responses?
we get lots of, especially like agencies and organizations that reach out. They drop off pamphlets to our community center, and we display those for people to take. I've chatted with a lot of different agencies and organizations about doing, some Q&A sessions so that the community can learn more about, their services, what they're doing. We've talked to like Jobs and Family Services. I did a luncheon with them, and it was really interesting to hear, like what they're experiencing in their, network, that, they need more queer and trans affirming foster parents, which is something that I had never thought about, because that's not something that like I'm confronted with. So like being able to make that connection and learn from other agencies in the community, like what needs they're seeing in the LGBTQ plus community, has also been helpful for us, so that we can reach out to the organizations that make sense and try and like build those networks so that we can, offer more recommendations to people.
Sure. The intersectionality of young adults is so important to recognize too, because you're not just talking about young people, but they could also be part of the LGBTQ community. They could be Black, they could be Hispanic. A lot of intersections in their cultural communities, and being able to direct and provide resources for them is an important thing. And I commend you for creating this space, because as far as I know, there's not a lot of support in Stark County for LGBTQ community. So thank you very much for your efforts. Faith, in your efforts to facilitate young adult groups, what insight do you have in establishing these groups, and what seems to be the hook that encourages them to participate?
Thank you for that question. I actually have a couple of different answers as to that. I would say one, consistency has been one of the biggest things when it comes to creating my groups. Specifically, I have public groups, I have Zoom groups, I have private groups. One of the private groups is a transitional home. And I know that when I started working with them at the beginning of 2023, I was not really seeing any numbers. They told me up front, working at our transitional house, they have some trust issues. So, you're gonna walk in here for these groups, they're gonna see you and they're not gonna come. And they're like, it's gonna take you coming, every month, bi-weekly, for them to really come out and wanna check out the group. And I would say probably the first 2 to 3 months, I did not have anybody show up for that group. They would see me, I would be there. Then after the 3rd month, I'd start to have like 1 come, then 2 come. And now it's to the point where this specific transitional house has 13 youth 18 to 24. And I've gotten as much as 12 of them to come to the group since then, with a year of being consistent. And they look forward to these move groups coming in. So I would say 1, consistency. I would secondly say empathy. Patience, definitely have patience. Don't give up. Like, that's exactly what the community does not need. Like, you have to have patience. Organization is another one that I said, like being organized in what your program is, what you're talking about, scheduling. It's just very important to be organized and have that communication with the people that you're working with. being present in the community was something that I mentioned when it comes to having the groups. So whether it's different community events, health fairs, there's a lot of different organizations having open houses, and there's networking groups that happen in Stark County, just making sure to be present in the community. Advertisement, so I use Facebook, Instagram. I'll go and find different people within Stark State, Kent State, and I will see who do I need to talk to about putting up some of the advertisements and events that are happening within Youth Move Stark County. So that's been very helpful as well. I talked about being clear in general, but being clear about what your organization and the program is. Most times when you ask people what they're doing, what their organization is doing, they will give you the mission statement, and like that's not actually as helpful as being able to really talk about what you're doing, to detail what's working, what's not working, you know. I also talked about partnership. That's been a huge thing with getting my groups together. So whether it's working at the churches or providing groups to the churches, transitional homes, going to where the youth already are has been helpful. I would also say healthy leadership, so having clear goals is important with our positions, and then also following policy, procedure, and living what you're teaching. Like I mentioned, that's a pretty big thing because people can kind of tell if you're being real in what you're saying or if you're not. So another side, I study forensic psychology and criminal justice, and one of the things that they talk about when it comes to problem solving is the first step is identifying what the problem is, so assessing the area, quite literally putting yourself in the community and seeing what am I actually seeing, what problems am I seeing, what am I hearing. Second thing, collecting data, so taking what you're hearing and then looking at the data that's already presented in Stark County, so that way you're clear as to what the problem is. The next step would be to have an action plan, and with a set time and goal, so working out your action plan. The fourth thing would be seeing how your action plan worked, so taking time to evaluate what worked and what's not working, so that way you're able to further improve. Has been very helpful in getting my groups organized and letting the community know what it is. I would also mention updated information, constantly having that learning mindset where there's constantly information that's being presented that's showing better ways to deal with mental health, better ways to have emotional wellness, and just making sure we constantly are keeping our information updated. And the last thing I would say when it comes to efforts with groups, and facilitating them and establishing them is having the passion. If you don't have the passion, you really shouldn't be in a position. Like if you don't have that fire, it's obvious, and the kids and the youth are not gonna react how you would want them to react. So that's my answers.
Great, thank you. Anybody else have questions? Hey, Isaiah, what role do family and peer relationships play in the behavioral health of young adults? And how can we leverage these relationships to provide support?
Okay, thank you. So I love this question, actually. Before I answer that, I want to speak about what Bryson was saying as far as like systems. So if I can have a theme for today, it would just be that the systems really aren't really designed for us, to succeed, honestly. So that's a problem within itself. And that creates a multitude of problems, to the point where even in the school systems, teachers are wondering, like, what am I doing wrong? Sometimes they say sorry to me for a student, that's not responsive, or maybe just doesn't have the energy to go. But it's like there's a whole system that created that to even happen, So that's just one itself. Like, we're all here trying to, obviously help in general, but there's some root issues that need to be fixed, policies, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But just in general, if that's one theme I can leave for today is, there's systems that are designed for us to not even succeed. So that's the biggest thing that we're battling with. And the reason why that is important is because it actually destroys families, to be honest. And when you destroy families, you destroy the development of people. And I always say, so I took this one class, it was sociology at Mount Union, and it kind of just like blew my mind, because she talked about what does it take to be a human, and they took out everything that we kind of use as distractions, I guess you can say. So they took out race, religion, even gender, a lot of things. And it was just like, what do we need to be a developed human, what we consider a developed human? And believe it or not, a lot of things were real basic, to be honest. It was shelter, love, language, affection, and just relationships, to be honest. It was just like, it was probably only 5 or 6 things. But systems know about that. And like what Bryson was saying too, the brain development is huge. They know that they can destroy certain parts of that, which will destroy homes. It will destroy relationships. But I just wanted to say that a little bit before I answer the question, because it is very important. But the families and peer relationships are, I would say honestly, the most important to people just in general, especially like young adults. Without stable homes, without stable families, without a stable mom and a stable dad, that particular human, the young adult, will grow up without the proper love and guidance that they need to honestly live life and to grow up to what we consider to be fully developed. I always say that I honestly feel that real love heals, to be honest. But I think that's something that a lot of young adults just don't have. And I know for some of us might be confused on, what do you mean they didn't get love? For an example, like me, like growing up without a dad, there's things I just didn't get. I just didn't have until I had to go through that myself, or just live that journey where something like failed or missed out, and I was like, oh man, like, maybe having like a dad here or something like that would have maybe either prevented me from that or gave me some kind of guidance on that. So it's very huge to making sure they have families, but stable families. And even if it's not both parents, at least some kind of stable form of family where they're really giving them that real love and guidance. And I say it's important because it teaches them really how to live life in all aspects. The school, home, society, even know how to deal with relationships. You can't really deal with that or know how to deal with that if you didn't get any kind of guidance or information even beforehand. Like just for example, I work with some students that have like behavior issues, and they're like they talk back to their teacher, like, why do I have to listen to my teacher? They're not my parent. Like for me when I was growing up, that was not about to happen in my household. Like, my mom did not mess around with that. But today, they don't have that kind of guidance where it's like you need to respect your teachers. When you go to school, respect the information you're given. You're there to learn, you're not there to play around. Some homes really don't have that conversations, and that's one of the reasons why families are so important. Another thing is that, so another thing is like peer relationships. From my experience, has been very, very helpful. For one, like we talked about, as a peer relationship, you're able to come on the same level as them. Even just the things that you could talk about, you can relate to them on a whole nother level that most people really can't relate on. With that in itself, you open up trust, you open up conversations that they just wouldn't be able to talk about with other people. So for example, like trending things, so like TikTok, some people might not be aware of TikTok, but if I can go and have a conversation with the students, like, hey, did you see that TikTok? We can laugh about it, joke about it, and then we just have a whole another conversation about, just getting to know them and just getting to know what they're going through. Other things like just understanding music and lingo, just how they talk. And when you say sometimes, like just the other day, I guess the new trending thing right now is like, sorry, forgive me, but one of the kids, he said like thugging like I'm bugging or something. But to be able to understand that, and just talk about it, we would just be able to have fun, but he knows that I can like relate to him. Versus like a teacher, they'd be like, what does that even mean? They're like, what is that? Like, are you cussing at me? Or something? Like, what are you saying? Are you being offensive? But just being able to understand them, to be honest, as a peer supporter, it's just a whole. And honestly, I didn't really know how big it was, to be honest, until I was actually starting to do it and I was in the training. Because my role actually, for all this even started, was a peer connector. With which is funny because we just created that role. We were just like, these are my peers and I'm connecting with them. So we just like created that role. And this was probably, I don't even know, like almost 7-8 years ago, probably almost going on. But we created that because we were able to see the power of it. Like I was able to just go in the classrooms, just have like real talks. The teacher trusted me to be able to just go in there, even like take them out on one-on-ones if we needed that. But within that that peer relationship, was able to just provide like a whole opportunity of support, and we was able to leverage that relationship because, for one, I was able to get to know them, get to really know them on a personal level. But I think that also a key factor of a peer supporter is that you offer solutions. So you have like a multitude of resources you have a multitude of other people to connect them to, because you're not going to be able to help them with every single thing. Specific, like you're not going to be the person, but it's good that if you have other connections, as far as like when we talk about collaboration, peer support is huge in that you're able to collaborate or just offer some other resources, whether it's like one of my best friends is a barber. You want to talk to a barber and you want to learn about that career kind of thing. He's also from the city. He's been through things that you've been through. So even just being able to offer a multitude of resources and connections is really like the leverage to kind of provide them that support. So sorry, I know that was a little long, but I think that was.
Thank you very much. And I think, some of the efforts that we have, and I know Ollie is here, he's a cultural ally for the Black community, but he was very instrumental in identifying barbershops within the Black community and having them go through a training to be kind of like a listening ear and to be able to provide resources, to give them advice for resources. And so that's kind of like, I think what you're saying is utilizing people that are in the community that are trusted and respected, and you feel comfortable with them, that if they say, hey, there's this resource that you might want to take a look at, is better than some stranger, so to speak. Like for example, like the Karen Akron Food Bank is a big blessing that we have. We actually been even taking students there. So it's like, say if like and I haven't had this experience, but just an example, like say if a teacher would say something like, if you need some food, you can just go here. They might take it wrong, as in like, I don't need that. I'm not homeless. I'm not this and that. But the reality, for one, the Akron Canton Food Bank is open to anyone, no matter your income. I actually even use it, to be honest, just on weeks because, prices are high right now, to be honest. But if I can go in as a peer supporter and say like, hey, I know you're going through this, you should probably check this place out. And if you need to, I'll go with you, and we can do that. It's just a whole like beautiful thing, honestly. It's like a powerful thing. And it's like I said, I know it's like a little simple, but it's huge to the point where like, I'll check that out, or I'll go out there, and we can go out there together and make sure that they get groceries for that week kind of thing. So most definitely. Right. I have some follow-up, so I'm going to ask this question, and this is for anybody. How can we promote collaboration and information sharing among different agencies, organizations, and professionals within the behavioral health system, and I'm going to say and beyond, to provide more comprehensive and coordinated care for young adults?
So I'll speak on this a little bit. So one of my biggest experiences, I would say that you cannot be selfish. So you can't be selfish as far as what kind of results that you want. You can't be selfish as far as the money that you think you'll gain out of this collaboration. Because we've been through like plenty of meetings. Like when you say meetings that, you just talk. Even when I was like 15, 16, 17, I actually got tired of going to meetings because I was like, we're just talking about the same thing. I was like, we're not even like really doing anything. So a way really to promote that, I think, is to just be real as far as like, for one, creating a plan, like figure out what real outcomes you guys are looking for. Not just, we're looking for, we get more grant money because we collaborate. Obviously that's a big, cool thing to have. But then also it's like, where's that money going to? That's like one of my follow-up questions, to be honest. Because like, if we're getting more money and it's going back to the community, then obviously that's a praise. But the reality is like sometimes it doesn't. It just goes towards more like the agencies, to be honest. So I would say really just trying to figure out what you guys would really want as far as a real outcome. AKA, we want more young adults to attend this. AKA, we want more young adults to get this out of this. And then also just figuring out how you guys can like really benefit from each other as far as I offer this service, but I don't have this service because I know this young adult needs it, but you guys have that. So I would say figuring out each other's like strengths and weaknesses, figure out how you guys can kind of really feed off each other in that.
I would also even add, like, depending on your organization or agency, seeing if it's within your budget to maybe offer some networking opportunities so that way you can get together with those that are also within the same goals of your organization. and also making sure to go to the already networking events that are provided, because there are networking events that are provided, so that way you can collaborate with other organizations.
Networking is huge. It's something that I actually didn't even really know about at a young age. So one thing we actually preach about is just like in general, just like your web of support and just kind of building that support that you need. But even with agencies, I feel like that's huge. You guys need to know. It's important for all of us to know who's out there, who's doing what. So for one, we're not stepping each other's toes. And then also one thing we learned is making sure we're not duplicating like the same work, if that makes sense. To where like, because what we found out, just I know all of us deal with this, but when you deal with the issue, you just want to figure out how can I help. So sometimes we create a whole new program out of that, which, you know, is like funding, energy, money, or sorry, I already said that, but it's a lot that goes into doing that. But if we can find ways where we're networking and we're just not stepping on each other's toes, it just unfolds like a lot of opportunity to be honest.
And I added the piece about beyond the behavioral health system because I know we have, I think Melissa from Aetna, and I think that's a big part too of our care system is billable service. And am I right? And so, you know, we hear a lot today about peer and how important it is, and we know there's all kinds of research that say it's important. And we even created, and Bev and I were part of creating the curriculum for family peer support for the state of Ohio. And there was another group that created the curriculum for the young adult peer support training. And all of that is great, and it's offered and you're certified. But guess what? It's not a billable service unless it's on the AOD side. And so, and family peer support is not a billable service unless it's connected to like IHBT or something like that. So there are strings attached. So I think in going to the systems, we only have a certain circle of influence, but if we shy away from pushing forward and setting the table and saying, hey, listen to what we're being told, listen to what research is saying, how can we fix this? And so I think that's a piece too that needs to be, we have to be willing to have those conversations. And I think that's an important piece. To you to be paid for it, absolutely. Would providers love to be able to offer peer support? Absolutely. But it's very hard for them when it's not a billable service. So they have to find other ways sometimes to fund that service. And sometimes that's kind of difficult to do. So I think there needs to be that table and the right people at the table and people that are willing to use their voice to share that information. Because it is a valuable thing to walk along somebody, especially in situations where not that they don't need service anymore, but maybe they don't necessarily need to meet with their counselor as frequently, but boy, that peer support would be a great person to walk alongside of them as they look for a job, as they navigate the marketplace for health care. And I just think of the young adults that are transitioning from the youth side of behavioral health to the adult side. And I want to pose this question is, in your experience, or if you know anybody, is there, or were you privy to someone helping you plan in moving from youth services to adult services?
I would say for me, it didn't really plan. It just kind of happened out of just seeing the importance of it. Because like Bryson saying, I think society, we put a certain age as just in general, we put certain ages that, you know, you need to be this by 18. You should have things figured out by this age. The reality isn't true. Like our program, I think when we started, it was ages like 14 to like 20 something, but we even raised that, the age, because we seen like there's really no limit, honestly. You know, you could be 30, 40 and things get like triggered and, you know, you go back into that kind of mindset. So honestly, I would just say for us, it kind of happened naturally. We just didn't really plan for that, and most of us, I feel like we can probably agree on that, because it doesn't really stop sometimes if you don't really get it solved. But even if you did get it solved, sometimes you just have things as you get older that may get like triggering, or that you just still need some help with.
So in the work that we do with identifying what to support around young people and helping build them out, a big part of it is learning from them about who's already in their bonding social capital. Who are those people that they turn to and rely on? It might be aunts or family members or neighbors, and then how do you strengthen those relationships? And how do we have to work with the students on one side to teach them, what are the skills to maximize how those people can help you get to wherever you want to go. But then you also have to kind of change the mindset of those people to say, okay, this is not just a little kid that sits at the Thanksgiving table. This is a future young adult or somebody that's transitioning. Who do you have in your network that can help them get to their next step? So I think, a lot of the work I hear here is about people that are paid to care for young people. And my biggest experience is that a lot of times that's a turnoff right away. If you're paid to come in my life, I'm going to see you when I'm going to see you, and then as soon as you get another job, you're gone. Like, I'm really intentional about everybody I'm in a relationship with. We're in for life. It doesn't matter what I'm doing. And so helping them understand, those people that are already in there, and then how to keep, on their own, empowering them on their own to make their life happen. Like he said, it's so powerful, and it's the social capital work that's going on the East Coast. We don't do it yet here. We don't understand it here. We still think we have to create all the systems to fix all the problems instead of empowering them to realize there's a lot of power within, even if they have dysfunctional families and things like that. There's still power. There's still social capital. There's resiliency. There's a lot of things for them to be able to tap into and to own. So proud of Isaiah for being here.
Appreciate it. And once you empower them, you guys have probably noticed it too, like just the feeling, for one, their facial expression changes. They just get like more happier, their eyes open up, and they really get that feeling of like, wow, I can actually do that for myself, to be honest. But it's just up to us to really equip them with those skills, and just know that there's no real time limit for it. It might take a week, it could take a year, it could take a couple years. But just being with them along that journey is really the biggest thing. But empowering them with those tips and tricks that we learned along the journey, and kind of just giving that on their tool belt. So when it comes up, we're here if they need us, but helping them knowing that they can try to figure it out on their own as well too.
So it's not necessarily you as an individual, but your efforts to make them, allow them to see the strengths that they have in the people surrounding them. So that when you're gone and you move on to another client or another job or whatever it is, you've helped them create that support system so that they can continue on without you or without a community health worker or a case manager or whoever it may be. But that's an integral part of what you should be doing with that young adult, so that it's not a total reliance on one person, but it's allowing them to see what else is out there for them that's been there and can continue to be there and not be paid.
How they can keep adding to it.
Keep adding to it. What do you look for?
He could not have sat up here and do what he's doing now, but he's gained those skills and that knowledge and that confidence in himself to be able to do that and speak so articulately.
Right. Awesome.
May I add something to that?
Sure.
I have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, and a lot of times my wife and I are just trying to survive. Literally. So I think supporting peers and young adults necessitates supporting parents who don't know a lot of stuff that I just rattled off today. Like, we think our young adults are supposed to be grown A people, right? They're not there. We're not there yet, right? So how do we educate parents as well? How do we do peer-to-peer mentoring in a way that incorporates family and parenting? It's not just the young person that we're talking to, but we're also integrating their parents and their family in that as well. That's hard, I'm only at 5 and 2, but I know it keeps going.
Mm-hmm.
You're just still trying to survive at 13. You're still trying to survive at 25. Parents just trying to survive out here.
Yes.
I just have a question that's kind of a shift a little bit, but this is great. But I work in a program that's working with young adults who age out of the foster care system, who necessarily don't have the parental support, but maybe have the peer support. So I was just wondering how you guys in the agencies and the things that you either started or work with, that you take the feedback of trying to get their voice heard to make changes to the programming or what?
So I can tell you specifically, I have a feedback form that I give to each of my groups. So my groups are provided to ages 11 to 30. My first group is age 11 to 17. My second group is ages 18 to 24. And my third group is ages 25 to 30. And after the groups, I always tell them, here's a feedback form. It's really appreciated if we can fill it out. This helps me to improve the program and also show what directly you have to say about the program. I always mention, don't write your name on it, just these feedback forms help. And since then, it's definitely been helpful. That first age group though, I've got some feedback where I'm like, thank you for the feedback, but like, for example, they were like, can we incorporate running in the group? I'm like, no, not exactly. But as for, I've had some of the feedback I've gotten is, can you implement more videos into the group, which I wasn't a really big video person back when I was a youth, so I found that very interesting that they wanted me to include a video in the group. And also I've had somebody mention a new topic that they wanted to be added to the group. So with that, I'm able to go and show NAMI, Starkmar, and Youth Move Ohio, this is what the youth is saying. This is what they like about the group. Here's what they want to improve about the group. And here's some questions they have regarding the group. So quite literally offering feedback forms and just letting them know, like, you don't have to, but this helps me improve the program, which ultimately I can take this back to my directors and we can figure out a better way of having our system of care.
Stuff. And then it's kind of similar to, I don't know if you guys do any like surveys, but if you do, one thing we found too is just make it like yes or no answers or responses are. So like just ask them like, do you like when we do this, yes or no? Do you like when this happens, yes or no? And with that, you can also take that back too. But the yes or no we found to be real impactful because for one, they don't have to, go into detail, but then also you'll get real like good results where you just say like, 90% of our kids do not like when this happens, or 90% of them say yes to when they like when this is going on. But you can just make it short too, just like 5 questions, so they're not like, oh my God, this is a 10-question survey. But then also even just having like real intimate conversations, maybe like even just taking notes. Like sometimes you just take them out to eat and just ask them like real questions about what they like and don't like, and try to maybe record some of that feedback. But most definitely, like what they're saying is the biggest thing, is making sure their voice is heard, and that information is like recorded, or we can share that.
Yeah, stuff beyond disaggregating data is also having the folk that your data is about interpret the data. So oftentimes that's where we stop. We might be woke enough to be like, all right, we're gonna get their voices, but then we do all the interpretation and make all the meaning of it and then publish all the reports on it. So you could have the focus group before that collects the data, but then also have the focus group after the data is collected to say, all right, let's make sense of this data, to like make sure that we are articulating your voice in a way that you want it to be articulated. We're not misinterpreting the meaning of our survey responses.
Yeah, I think that's an important piece, and so many times we have focus groups and we ask different communities to share their insight, and I know a lot of times the feedback we get, oh yeah, you come to us so that you can go get your information and get your data to get your grants, and then we never see you again. So it's important that if you are conducting focus groups or surveys or things, that you share with them what the results were and what the intent is now, and maybe they can help you create the intent of what will happen because of that data. Then you have empowered them, and they feel part of the solution. They feel valued and feel affirmed for what the information that they gave to you was, instead of just taking their data and see you later, thank you very much. So I think that's an important thing when we're considering looking at things like that.
And use, I'll do a little pitch here, use your local universities. Like, we here, right? We did all this school to know how to do things like this. We have our fancy PhDs, and we're well overworked. But I'd rather be working with you on like how to collect data and produce great reports than, sitting on a committee meeting about tenure track review, or worse things, right? So please leverage your institutions of higher education. Like, that's why they're there originally, and I think still.
Anybody else have any other questions? Yes.
I have a question for Abby.
Sure.
Abby, do you have any support groups in the evening or on the weekends?
Yeah, so we just do the one support group every month, and it's in the evening. It's every third Wednesday of the month from 6 to 7:30 p.m. At our community center. And we always post that on Facebook, Instagram, our website, all those kinds of things as well. And then we do youth programming every week, so that's ages, I'm gonna blank, I think it's 12 to 18. And I think once a month they also do a little like support group kind of activity. It's a little less formal, just kind of like discussion questions to get people talking about their experiences.
Do you have any age groups for like 27?
So all of our events are pretty much all ages. If you're under 18, we just ask you come with an adult for liability purposes, except for our youth programming, which is just 12 to 18. And you don't have to have like an adult present for those, but all of the remainder of our events are for all ages. And so we probably mostly have people within like the 20 to 30 age range. Something in the new year we're going to be starting is kind of more like affinity-based group events. So something that has been widely requested is a group for older people in the community, 60 and over. So we're going to be starting to do some social gatherings for, folks in the LGBTQ plus community who are 60 and older. We're going to do a trans-specific one. People in the trans community can get together, talk about their experiences, support each other. And then we've also had requests to do kind of like a sapphic, lesbian, queer women, bi women group, where people can meet each other. These are kind of the groups that it's a lot harder, especially in this area, to meet people that is in that same kind of population. So we're going to be starting that in the new year, which I'm really excited about.
Abby, I'd like to ask you, because resources are limited, what steps can we take to create a more inclusive, supportive, and affirming environment for LGBTQ plus young adults seeking support?
Yeah, I think that constantly educating yourself about, the issues that the LGBTQ plus community faces, especially like here in Canton, Stark County, Ohio, doing constant education. It can be great to do like a training and learn kind of like the basics, but then you have to keep re-educating yourself, keep familiarizing yourself with the community, new things that are coming up for the community that they're going through, learning how to, it kind of sounds silly, but like interact with like LGBTQ plus people. I think around here, like a lot of people don't have many queer trans friends. They haven't met a lot of like queer and trans people. So trying to like learn how to appropriately like interact with people and not ask, I guess like triggering questions or like questions that you could Google, right? Like, okay, what does like assigned female at birth mean? What does assigned male at birth mean? Like, if someone is coming to you for a resource, a service, but then they're having to educate you about, the things that they're experiencing or like things that are very core to their life that is just kind of like basic to their identity, like what assigned female at birth means or, what transitioning might look like for, different people. It can be really difficult to trust in the systems and trust in the services if they're not coming with that knowledge or, any basis of that knowledge. So I think trying to educate, yourselves about that, and especially educating yourselves about what it means to live in a heteronormative and cisnormative society as, queer and trans people, and how traumatizing that is, and the trauma that comes with that, and the baggage, and learning how you can tailor tools and coping skills and the different strategies that you have to those specific things that the queer and trans community face, as well as recognizing that many people in the queer and trans community have different goals. They have different, their support networks look different. A lot of people don't have that blood family that supports them. More often it's chosen family, people that they've met along the way that they have found that really lift them up and support them and have become like family to them. Instead of having a mom or a dad or a sister, that's kind of filling that hole for them. And then recognizing that, in the LGBTQ plus community, people have different goals, so it's not always we're going to have the same nuclear family. We're not going to get married and have kids at 23, 24. Maybe you don't want kids at all. Maybe you have different goals. Maybe right now you're just trying to learn how to live as authentically yourself, because it's something that queer and trans people talk about a lot. But childhood is, and the teen years are often suppressing your identity, and so then when you get to a place where you can be yourself, it's kind of like reliving your teenage years and all those sorts of things, and having those experiences that people already have, in their dating life and things like that. So learning about those types of things can be really helpful in relating to LGBTQ plus people. And I think just again, like I said earlier, not just listing that you support the LGBTQ plus community, but what that actually means in practice. How are you, going to support your client in their session as someone in the LGBTQ plus community? What experience do you have working with, the different people in that community? Because someone who is lesbian does not have the same struggles or same needs as someone who is bisexual or someone who is trans. So it's not a monolithic community. It's, very diverse. There's lots of different experiences and struggles just within the, hodgepodge of LGBTQ plus people.
I want to be mindful of our time. It's 12:29. I want to take this time to thank the panelists and Bryson for being a part of today, for sharing a wealth of information with us. I hope that you are going to come away today with a few nuggets to take back with you. And like I said, I'm not letting up on that challenge. You might be getting an email from me to say, hey, are you willing to sit at the table? And let's get connected. So I'm going to keep that going, and I hope that I will hear from some of you, if not many of you. But I certainly want to thank you, the panelists, and thank you, the audience, for sharing your morning with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.